Hi YouTube, it's Rebecca, and I just shot part of this video only for the camera to turn off, and since I don't have editing software yet, I can't just pick up where I left off and then cinch them, that's a scissors, I don't know what that is, but stitch them together later. I can't fucking do that. I have to do this all in one fucking take still, which I like. I actually like doing it all in one take. I like being genuine on camera. I just like talking to people. And eventually I probably will do edited videos, but not right now. So this video is just gonna be 5 things about me. And I did like 3 of them already, but it's okay. I'm gonna start over. So the first thing I talked about was my favorite food, which is sizzling rice soup. It is a Chinese soup, and there is only one restaurant I know of in my area that serves it. And I've been going there since I was like 3, because we used to live near there. But I only get to go there once a year for my birthday, and it's not like a get to go there thing. It's just, it's not the most convenient place to just go for food. And every year for my birthday, I'm always like, while I'm there, I'm eating and it's great and everyone's having a nice time and the food's good and the service is good. The decor is interesting. I love going there, but like, if you can imagine like a 90s, early 2000 Motel 6 decorations, but then make it Chinese in a restaurant, that's what this place looks like. I love it there though, but it's just so inconvenient to get to. So it's always like, I say I'm gonna go when it's not my birthday, but then that never happens. The last time I was there on a day that was not my birthday was after I graduated high school 7 years ago. So I've been there like 8 times in the last 7 years, even though it's my favorite place in the world. But moving on. I keep laughing, but it's just because I already fucking did this, and I'm trying to keep a straight face, and just like, because I really like doing this because I can convey, you know, stuff to you guys about me and just talk. But oh gosh, it's so ridiculous when I have to do it all over. I want to take this more seriously, but I'm just laughing because I'm trying not to repeat it exactly the same way I already did it. But anyway, number 2, before I got like a conventional job for the first time, when I was looking for jobs and couldn't find anything and no one would hire me, I ended up making and selling jewelry for like a year. I did that. And I've kept so much stuff from that, because what happened was I would make jewelry, but I would buy a lot of supplies, especially like on sale. Like Michael's would have sales on stuff regularly, and so would other places. And so I'd just buy a bunch of stuff because I never knew what I was going to make. And the problem with that is I have boxes and boxes and boxes of supplies, and I'm pointing that way because they're literally sitting over there. I see 7 boxes full of just jewelry stuff. That never got used, and I actually have a ton of stuff that I already made that just never sold, because all I did was craft shows, because I never got around to setting up an Etsy. So there's that, and then after that, but before I got a regular job, I also, this is number 3 by the way, this is a 3rd thing, I'm separating them. I could just make them like the things that I did before I had real jobs, but no, fuck that, we're making it a 3rd thing. And so I actually sold Dove chocolate as a in-home salesperson. Like I did those parties where people come into somebody's home and they're like, buy these things, here, try these things, look at these things. Please and then I had to convince other people to let me into their home to do these parties, and I was terrible at it. It was so hard. It's so hard to convince people to let you into their homes. And we started off with like my family would all do parties, and that was fine. And the sales part wasn't difficult because the products were really good, so it was really easy to sell them. The problem was with consistent business is you have to convince people to host a party, invite their friends at their home, and nobody wants to do that. People come up with a million excuses. Like I had one lady who was like, oh, it's so fun and I'd love to do it, but we're remodeling our kitchen, so it's not a good time. and she probably was remodeling her kitchen. She was one of those people that, like, she was very, she had money, and she just came off as somebody who remodels their kitchen a lot. I don't really know how to explain that, but I work in a job now where I work at a, gosh, I don't want to give this away, especially after my last video, but I work at a place where you would buy things to remodel a home. There's several of these places, so that's not really a giveaway. And there are different types of these places as well. They're not all the same. Like, there's a place where I do not work near me where you can get stuff to remodel, like, a lot of stuff in your home, but it's all like slate and rock stuff to buy, like nice countertops and stuff. So there's places like that. So it's not necessarily a big giveaway. But yeah, I work in one of those places, so I know what I'm talking about when I say this woman like looked like she remodeled her kitchen a lot. Also, fun little thing in the background, I wanted to cover up this open doorway I've got here because I can't afford a door, and it doesn't even really have like hinges or anything for a door. It doesn't even have a frame. It's just like the empty sad hole where a frame was. So I took this this little wall hanger that I got a couple years ago for Halloween and just hung it over the door. So there's going to be a skull and some spooky stuff in the background over there for a while. But yeah, anyway, so that was the third one, and like I could not get into people's homes. They would not invite me over to do parties, and so it just kind of fizzled out eventually because you cannot convince people. People do not want to do that these days. Like, the Tupperware party thing is just over. Like, you can try, but it's over, trust me. So that's where I left off last time. So now I'm coming up with new things because I'm just doing this off the cuff for the rest of them. For those ones, technically, I did them already. But yeah, so number 4. I graduated high school early. I think I mentioned this in another video, but it was really weird. I did not expect to graduate high school early for a couple of reasons, and none of them were that I wasn't a good student. I was an honor roll student throughout the entirety of high school. I was an excellent student, but when I was in 8th grade, we were having a meeting because I was failing. I was failing 8th grade for a multitude of reasons. Mostly I just didn't care anymore. I was all over the place, so there was that. And while we were in the meeting, my mother said to the people we were in the meeting with, the school with, that all she wanted was for me to graduate high school. That's all she wanted. Like, that was the whole goal, for me to graduate high school eventually. And then a couple years later, like, I was a junior, and I was talking to one of my teachers, and she was like, well, are you thinking about taking early graduation? And I said, I can't take early graduation because our credit system, it was weird because I went to 2 schools in high school. I started at one school and then I moved to another, and the credit systems were different. And you didn't get as many credits in the other school for anything. Like, their credit system, you just needed less in general, and so you got less credits for each class. So when I switched over, I thought I didn't have enough credits to graduate early. And it turns out I had more than enough credits to graduate early. I had done all of my required classes, I had everything I needed, and I was really surprised. And so I was like, well, what does that mean to take early graduation? And it means that instead of doing your last, for me, it was my last 2 quarters of high school, so my last semester of high school, I didn't even have to go to. Like, I just, like, no classes, didn't technically get my diploma at that point, but I just didn't have to go to school anymore. And my last day of high school was January 22nd, 2010. And I kind of wish I'd stayed in high school. That's something I don't talk about much, actually. I wish I'd stayed in high school. Because looking back, what I did was I graduated high school. I went on a 2-week trip with my mom, which was really great, and I don't regret that. But then I came back, and I took a single college course at the community college, and that was nice and all. But I didn't have any friends, and it was a really awkward transition, and a lot of stuff went wrong, and I look back on it and I think, would I have been better off staying in high school another another, like, what was it, 4 months or something. It was like, no, it was more than 4 months. It was like 5 months. I think it was 5 months. I'm trying to remember. It was like 5.5 months, somewhere in there. Because it wasn't 6 months. That's definite. But it was like 5 months. And I do seriously wonder if maybe things would have been better if I had stayed in high school, which is crazy because I hated high school. Do not get me wrong, I fucking hated high school. I was literally talking to someone I went to high school with the other day, and we all agree, everyone who went to my high school agrees that my high school, and even just the town I live in, is the worst place in the fucking world. It sucks, and I don't say that lightly. I'm literally saying this. This is a girl who just got back from 6 months traveling the world. She was in Uganda, she was in Rwanda, she was doing just work there, charity work and things like that, I guess. And she said she was there and she's seen some of like the just places that are a wreck, places that are a mess, and she comes back here and she was here for 3 days, and it's awful here. It's terrible. It's a terrible place to live. And I hate saying that because I grew up here. My family's been here. I mean, it's just not a good place to be. I don't know what it is about this place, but it's awful. And maybe it's just that like thing that people have who've never been outside of their town, like never lived anywhere else. But I mean, at the same time, like this was someone who has lived out other places, and I know people who have lived other places. I know people who went to college and came back, and everyone that I talked to agrees that this is the worst place. It sucks here, and everyone just wants to get out. So yeah, that was number 4, I guess. I only semi-remember what I talked about high school, that's right. And then number 5, what do I want to talk about for that? So I guess that the easiest thing for me to talk about that's about me is that I write novels. I do. A couple years ago, and I say a couple, but it was really, gosh, we're going on 6 years now, so that's a lot. It was like, it can't even be 6 yet. It can't be 6 yet. It has to be 5. It has to have been 5 years ago. I heard about National Novel Writing Month for the first time. And I'm excited because it's not coming up. It's fucking November. But all of the prep stuff that I usually go to is coming up, and I heard about it for the first time, and I had wanted to write novels before, but it's really hard to motivate myself to do that. And I never really sat down and tried to write long form before, and so I wasn't really sure what I was doing. But I heard about it and I thought, because nothing else was going on. This was actually the year before I started doing the jewelry sales thing. I wasn't doing it at the time. I was literally doing nothing. I had dropped out of college the year before, and I had nothing was going on. I couldn't get a job. I hadn't really found anything else to do yet. I hadn't started the jewelry thing yet. And so I was like, you know what? This is a good time to try this. And I loved it. I loved writing. The first thing I wrote is absolute trash, and it'll never see the light of day. Probably. When you write a novel for the first time and you don't know what you're doing and you don't really know how to write long form, you get weird problems arising. Like, weird stuff happens that, doesn't work. Like, I didn't know how long things should take. I didn't know how to do scenes very well. I could do scenes, but, a lot of them were too long and there was too much going on, and I didn't know how to break it up better. And I think that pacing was a huge problem for me. So I just ended up with something that conceptually was really interesting, but practically was such a mess that if I ever wanted to use any of it, I would have to scrap it and start over. And at that point, I'd much rather work on something else. I don't love the idea of starting over with this. I feel like it had too many problems, too many things that I'd have to fix or figure out, and honestly, it's just not worth it, because especially since then, I've done this. I tried to do it all 5 times, all the last 5 years, but what ended up happening is one of the years I had a bit of a problem. The year that my parents split up, I had a story written up. Like, well, you don't write it. The thing about National Novel Writing Month is you do not start until November 1st. You don't put a single word on that paper. You can do planning, you can like chart out plot and stuff like that, but actually writing, you can't do any of that. And so I had like my characters, I had the plot, I knew vaguely what I was doing, because I'm not someone who plans a ton in advance. Like I've only ever like fully sectioned out like my whole story before, and it was last year, and it worked really well, but that's not the point. The point was I just don't normally do that. I just kind of have the general idea, I have the characters, I have an idea of where I'm going, and then I just kind of let myself write, which I really enjoy, and it's really fulfilling, because I every time that I haven't had my parents splitting up and having a horrible disaster of that, then I've completed it. I've done the 50,000 words, which is what your goal is. It's 50,000 words. And if you haven't written, I don't know if that sounds like a lot to people who've never written before. I don't know if it sounds like a ton. It's kind of in the middle. It's a lot. It's a lot to accomplish in the amount of time, but it's less words than a novel usually is. Usually you need more words than that to get to the end. So there's that. And actually, I know people who do 4 times that much in the same amount of time. Some of the people I know from doing this year after year, oh my gosh, they do like 400,000 words. It's crazy. I have no clue how they can manage that. Like it's insane to me, but it's really impressive at the same time. But like, so 50,000 words is a lot, especially if you've never done it before. There are people who just can't get there in the month, but try really hard. But every time I have done it, I have succeeded. Except for the year my parents split up, when everything went wrong. Like I said, I had everything like I needed to plan out. I had all my characters' names. I had like the general plot. I had like, I had a couple like destination names because it was a journey thing. It was complicated, so I'm not going to talk about it, especially because I actually might want to write this at some point. But what happened was, not only did my parents, like, everything kind of imploded, because it actually started in October, so it was the month before that my dad got kicked out of the house. But then literally the weekend before the 1st of November, I was supposed to go to a party, which is the kickoff party, where we all get together and we kind of like just hang out and we get excited about writing and talk about what we're going to do with people, and just kind of, it's always fun. They're always such cool people, and we do a bunch of stuff, and that's great. And what happened is, that weekend, like, everything kind of imploded with my parents, with their divorce, with everything crazy. I mentioned in the other video about my dad that he actually broke down a door with a sledgehammer to get into the house, which is not good. And that was actually the morning of the party. I don't think I mentioned that in the video. That was the morning I was supposed to go to this kickoff party, and I still went to the party after that, because what are you supposed to do after that? And I already had made cupcakes, and I was like, I said I'd go, and I said I'd bring cupcakes, so I'll go. And I went, and that was fine, but then something else happened. Like, I probably would have been too much of a disaster to actually get anything done anyway that month, but then just a couple days before November 1st, my laptop died. I should say that I murdered it. I murdered my laptop. I murdered my first laptop because I put The Sims 3 on it, and I put every expansion pack on it that had come out at that point. And it was a laptop, and it just killed the whole thing. It was really a bad thing for me to do. I shouldn't have put so much stress on that thing. And it just basically died, and I couldn't, I emergency took it to like the closest PC repair shop, and they looked at it and they were like, there's really nothing we can do for you. And so I bought a new computer, but the problem was all of my planned files, like every character name, everything I had planned out, was gone. We could not get it back because I did something stupid. Instead of putting it in a fucking document like a sensible person, I put all of my information on the note card program, which was dumb, but I'm still guilty of it. I do it on both of my other computers now. I just like them. They're really convenient, and I don't have to open anything. I can just like click and put it all there, and I should really transfer a lot of that in case anything happens to my computers, but I'm probably not going to. But yeah, so it just, I couldn't get it back, and so I gave up for the month. But yeah, that was 5 things about me. A little tangenty, but that's kind of what I like doing anyway. So yeah, I hope everyone has a nice weekend. Tomorrow's Saturday, so that's gonna be fun for people who don't have to work like I do. Fortunately, I only have to work for 4 hours and 45 minutes because that's a sensible amount of time to have someone come into a job, 4 hours and 45 minutes. I know it's kind of like a round number, like the 45, because it's like, oh, it's 3/4 of an hour, but fuck that, half-hour intervals. Why can't they just, we open at 6 a.m., we close at 10 p.m., just give everyone the same half-hour intervals. That's not too crazy. But I've got to work, so I will be back tomorrow, though, and I hope everybody has a good Saturday, and good night.